I think that misconception comes from having a bad employer at some point that was a small business or family-run business or something, and they saw it with their own eyes, like the owner taking advantage or price gouging or whatever, and they just kind of force that model on everybody who has their own business. But anybody that's had their own business or been a freelancer or kind of done their own thing knows how kind of full of shit that is.
Guys, we got a special one today. The guy who's quietly shaping how the building industry shows up online is finally stepping out from behind the camera. Doug Duvall, co-founder of Motif Media, is the reason why the Modern Craftsman podcast looks the way it does, sounds the way it does, and honestly exists the way it does. He's built a media company that helps builders tell better stories, and he's been riding shotgun with us since the beginning. Doug's got roots in the trades, a deep understanding of branding, and a no BS approach to content that has helped dozens of builders elevate how they show up. And Tyler's been dying to ask a question that he got from his good friend, Dom.
We had to dig into it some.
So we're going to let that happen. And the question is not why does it take so long to do video edits? We'll start off with that. This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. If you're looking for architecturally authentic windows, look no further than Andersen A-Series product line. Designed in collaboration with architects, Andersen A-Series products are very finely tuned with clad wood windows and doors.
Their matching sight lines, matching glass setbacks, and size options will help you bring any architectural style to life, down to the smallest detail. And with numerous glass options and composite exteriors, they're Andersen's best performing and most energy efficient products capable of withstanding some of the toughest conditions.
They're a great fit for historic projects or any project where you want to achieve an elevated look with top tier performance. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/modern craftsman.
So we are putting a handful of A-Series doors in our project and some windows too, just sizing options in the A-Series a little bit different than the other series. So I'm pumped to bring that to the table and show you guys and girls what we have going on there soon as well.
I heard you might be filming that.
We might be.
Probably.
Will be.
This podcast is also brought to you by Build-A-Trend. Spring's here, and if your job site's anything like mine, it sounds like a swarm of subcontractors, smells like sawdust, and, well, a little bit of stress. Look, busy season is awesome, but it also means stuff falls through the cracks. Build-A-Trend's to-do features help you keep every task, follow-up, and, oh shoot, I forgot that moment organized.
You can assign tasks to your crew, set deadlines, and make sure nothing gets buried in a group text again. It's like a checklist, but one that actually gets used. If you're juggling 10 jobs and 47 sticky notes, it's time to level up. Go to buildertrend.com/MC demo and see how to-dos can save your sanity this season. Don't wait till you miss a slab pour. Schedule your demo now.
This podcast is also brought to you by Velux. You're always looking for ways to wow homeowners, and who doesn't love more natural light? With Velux skylights, you can transform any space by adding more natural light without sacrificing privacy.
Bring to life focal points, including the kitchen or living room, or brighten up small spaces such as closets or bathrooms and leave your clients speechless. Learn more at veluxusa.com/remodeler.
And this podcast is also brought to you by Harnish Workwear. Through unwavering focus, physical discipline, and a devotion to mastering the craft, Harnish doesn't just make workwear, it sets a new standard for how they show up both on and off the job. This is more than clothing, it's a commitment to a lifestyle of growth, performance, and elevated purpose.
The new H-Label line is changing the game. You get high-quality work uniforms with performance-grade fabric that moves with you, not against you. No excessive bulk, no second-guessing your brand image, just sharp professional design backed by innovative fabric tech that protects like a multi-layer system while wearing a single layer.
And when it comes to printing your logo, it's dialed, clean, durable, and consistent every single time. Built for the field, designed for the future, tested by the industry. Harnish, elevate what you wear and own what you build. If you guys want a discount on that, you got to sign up for our newsletter on moderncraftsman.co. We can get you a 15% discount on all of the H-Label stuff, as well as their Creator One pants that you've seen Tyler and I wear, and their Pioneer sweatshirt. So head over to our website and get that discount code.
Last thing I want to mention here, Nick and I, the Modern Craftsman team, are excited to announce a new monthly workshop series that we will be holding on Zoom. So each month we are going to select a topic, a worksheet, or a form from one of our online courses and dive deeply into it with you. So we're going to provide you with that resource and the workshop completely free. All you have to do is sign up for the newsletter at moderncraftsman.co. The goal here for us is to expand our content offerings, create a more personalized experience for all of our loyal followers. For example, we recently gave away a business scaling worksheet to our mailing list, which outlines a path, goals, growth strategy for residential construction businesses of any size. So in the live workshop, we talked our way through the worksheet step by step and answered any questions that the attendees have. So if you want to be a part of this journey, don't miss out. Sign up for the newsletter to get access to these free monthly workshops. Once you're signed up, you'll just need to pre-register for each session, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Tyler, I don't think I've ever seen you in a blue shirt.
Dude, I know.
Like what the F?
Ever since the incident.
Yeah, I have blue eyes, so when I wear blue, it usually like makes my eyes super blue. So I always, when I wear blue, people comment about it, but I never really wear blue.
That'd be my branding. Well, I have
So
blue eyes,
you were feeling down and fishing for compliments.
Yeah, exactly. I knew Rachel would be getting all the attention today with her birthday, so I was like, screw this.
Fuck that.
No, I like normally, I'm not gonna lie, most days, even though I've been working from home a lot, I still have work stuff to do where I'm still working in some sense. So I typically just put on clothes that can get super crappy. But today being Rachel's birthday and working from home and then podcasting, I was like, I'm not going to do anything. Like I'll tell myself I'm not going to do anything work related. And then I'll get like 30 minutes and I'll be like, I'll go change the oil on my dirt bike. And then I'll just trash my clothes. So I knew today I was no chance of doing anything work related. So I don't have on a work shirt.
Nice.
Yeah.
That latte looks good. What is that?
So I don't know. Rachel went to
What the
get
fuck?
a facial.
She's buying you coffee on her birthday?
Well, she went to yoga. She took the day off. Then she went to yoga, and then she just went and got a facial. And she stopped and grabbed coffee afterwards. And I guess they don't have black coffee, so I have this like creamy coffee. We'll see how this goes.
Don't have black coffee.
Wait, what?
I don't know.
That's how you get coffee.
That's what I thought too.
Black first, but it
I
must
don't
come
know.
in a jug pre-made.
I don't know what the deal is.
It's 100% what it is.
I couldn't say anything. What am I going to say? Argue with her?
No, I'm not. I'm just
No,
saying.
I am genuine. Like, there's genuine curiosity in my mind right now. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you know what Mary Lou's is, Tyler?
No.
It's like a franchise.
even
around
they
here.
have black.
They
coffee.
have black coffee, but whenever a friend of mine's in town, Mike Scarmelino, we go there and we get this iced cappuccino thing, and it really took the mystique out of it because it's really good. It's pre-made in like a gallon jug.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm like, oh man, that really takes the wind out of myself.
Maybe
That's probably what it
this
is.
Dude, when Meg and I started dating, we used to go there and we get the Girl Scout cookie, which would be like, it was straight up milkshake, but we would order it.
Yeah.
I forget, like without whipped cream and without sugar or something like that, because it's just like
It's
an insane
Yeah.
calorie thing. But speaking of which, I'm trying to think of what Oreo drink. Someone posted this yesterday. It's like this Oreo drink that just came out.
They used to make all the chocolate milks, like Nestle made a bunch of those chocolate milks that were all different flavors, like cookies and cream flavors and crap like that.
It's like the consistency of canola oil.
Yeah. Or they wanted to make where you can get like milkshakes, kind of pre-made milkshakes that are super weird as well. They have them at the convenience stores. That's like where I draw the line.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just not. I'm not going to eat that.
Not going there.
I got to find this drink because someone posted it yesterday, and there's 2,500 calories in it,
Yeah, I believe it.
and it's like an
Probably
Oreo milkshake, and someone was commenting about being a Oh, here it is.
I think a lot of those drinks that people get, like the iced coffees or frozen coffees, frozen drinks and stuff like that, it's you're just eating a milkshake that tastes
Yeah.
like coffee.
Well, I mean, oh, here it is.
Do you guys remember, does Dunkin' still have culottes?
Culottes, yes,
I'm
I
sure they
loved
do.
culottes.
Dude, yeah, when I was little, those things were so good down the shore in the summer. You're like, I'm going to get a coffee culotta.
A Coolada, bro.
Dude, so good. I haven't had one of them, and it's been a minute.
That's hilarious. Coolada, Dunkachino. They come up with some pretty
The coffee culotta.
good names.
They were delicious, though.
It's so weird. Like all of these photos, I can't. It's like they're intentionally blurred out. Oh, here we go. Calories, 2,600 calories.
The thing is that
263 grams of sugar.
you don't need to eat anything else for the rest of the day.
Bro, like 135 grams of fat.
That's just efficiency.
330 grams of carbohydrates.
Who makes it?
Baskin Robbins.
Oh, yeah, well, of course.
It's got 38 grams of protein in it.
It's not bad.
Like, I mean, it's not, but not at 26. Like, this
Not intentionally.
I don't want to go down this health rabbit hole, but like, that's like going back to your comment. It's like, oh, I don't know why I can't lose weight. I don't know why I'm like, it's like, well, your coffee literally has 900 calories in it.
Yeah, you're starting your day off with cream
I forget
and
who it
sugar.
was. Someone on Instagram posted their coffee order one day, and it was just like, picked up my iced coffee, and I zoomed in on the label, and it was just like atrocious. So I put it into Chat GPT. I was like, how many calories are in this? And it was 900 calories.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I'm like, compared to my black is 0 to 20 calories.
So
Like,
I've known Nick long enough to know his original coffee order at Dunkin' Donuts.
What was my original coffee order?
I want to say it's 8 and 8
What that? 8 and 8 what?
from 8 creams, 8 sugars in college.
No.
Absolutely not.
Nick, you used to get. I want to
No,
phone in.
it was a
Mike
French
Summerall.
vanilla extra. It was my
Okay.
high school order. But I don't know. Maybe is
In
extra
college
8 and 8,
is similar.
but is extra 8 and 8?
No, it's probably I don't
Four
know.
and
I don't know the
six.
numbers, but it was definitely your order in college is definitely heavy on the cream.
Yeah. It's
Oh yeah,
alright.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely extra cream, extra sugar.
You did. I will give you credit. One day you just started getting it black.
I was
you
just gonna tell you,
stayed
I
consistent
know
from there.
I know when that was.
Yeah.
So Rich Girardi, who might listen to this podcast, he's a builder down in Long Island, and he was in my class.
Hey, yo, Richie.
And we were doing this project for Skills USA that we were going to Las Vegas for, and he went out and we were like, we would work crazy long hours, like deep into the night to get this thing done. And he was like, hey, I'll go grab coffees. And he came back and I was like, did you grab any cream or sugar? He goes, what? No. And everyone's just drinking black coffee. And I was like, all right, there's no better time to learn to like black coffee. And that was it. I fucking never went back to cream and sugar. It's so funny that you brought that up. I was thinking about that the other day because I think Marley asked me, she was like, why don't you have anything in your coffee? Mom's taste so much better. I was like, oh yeah, I gave it up in college.
When I started making coffee at home and had a mug, like a to-go mug, I stopped putting cream and sugar in it because it'd be so gross.
Oh
By
yeah.
the time you didn't have anywhere to wash it at work, and you'd get home and it'd just be so nasty and funk. I can still recall one of the first coffee mugs that I got, like when I started working, and it would be so gross in the threads of that thing from just cream and sugar sitting in there in the heat of summer. I think I was still drinking at that point, and it was like, no thanks, I'm good. Let's just go to black coffee at this point.
Watching the cream curdle.
Yeah.
I just looked it up. A standard coffee has 4 cream, 4 sugar. So an extra would be 5 and 5.
I didn't mean to put 8 and 8 on you. All right,
No,
so 5 and 5.
like that's just such a specific detail. I wanted to know.
That was definitely a thing though back in the day. Is the numbers 8 and 8, 4 and 4.
That's funny. I don't
Dunkin'
remember
Donuts.
that.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if it's still a thing.
I think maybe I heard extra, or people have like sweet and low.
like I someone recently got me a coffee and it was like a regular like cream and sugar. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that. It's just it's terrible.
So I forgot, Doug, you were coming on today, but it's actually, I feel like, perfect. So I want to have a quick conversation based on a comment that somebody made to me, and it's one of my good friends. You had met him, Dom.
Dom.
Dom. He's
Richie.
dude. Dom Rinaldi sounds like he should be from Long Island too. But
he's from the Jersey Shore.
Yeah. So we were having a conversation, just cost of living. He's younger. He's trying to buy a house. He's engaged, and it's just overwhelming how expensive everything is. And he didn't mean anything by it, but let me pull up essentially what the text was. I have a couple of things open here. So he basically said essentially that, like, as a boss, you guys are lucky because you can just give yourself or adjust your raises, adjust your wages, give yourself a raise as with inflation and as the cost of living goes up.
We're so lucky.
Right. And I'm like, but what if everyone thinks about it that way? Like, if they just think, oh yeah, well, the price goes up, so you can just adjust your wages. And it got me thinking, like, at face value, that makes perfect sense. And I think that if I weren't in my position, I would probably say that as well. But, like, how do you adjust for that? How do you accommodate that? And, like, how is that a misconception within our industry? And then I also, a while back, something that I had developed that I never put out, is like I priced out a repaint for a job, and I broke out all the costs as if I was going to hire an employee to do that. And I think maybe I'll screen share that with you guys and dive into that. But it makes sense for Doug as well, because Doug obviously owns his business, and like the challenges of hiring employees and how difficult it is to actually just raise your price, because we all say that, and how typically we don't raise our price, we just cut our profit somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah, I think that comes from, I think that misconception comes from having a bad employer at some point that was a small business or family run business or something, and they saw it with their own eyes, like the owner taking advantage or price gouging or whatever, and they just kind of force that model on everybody who has their own business. But anybody that's had their own business or been a freelancer or kind of done their own thing knows how kind of full of shit that is, especially if you're doing things above board and to the letter of the law. Like, we don't give ourselves raises. I since Motif started, I haven't given myself a raise.
Well, yeah, and like I'm looking at like numbers post COVID where things went crazy. Everyone's like, raise your prices, and I'm like, but did I really raise my prices, or did I just kind of account for things?
Yeah, and we actually have gone through the process of raising our rates quite a bit from what they were, and that's just to kind of get to median. I mean, we were undercutting ourselves pretty dramatically, and we have raised our rates, and it's substantial. It's a lot of money, but it costs a lot of money to media. At the end of the day. And I'd say we're probably in the middle of the road, and we're putting out a higher quality product than most people in our price bracket.
So then, as an owner of a business, who would you say typically eats that? Because I think that with most businesses that are competitive in nature or competitive industry, that it's this, like, there's constantly tension between raising your prices, remaining competitive, and also just pacing in inflation. So, like, where does that, and I'm not even saying, right, you bid a job and then you don't have an escalation clause, but just like in our industry, from my perspective, yeah, everything becomes more expensive, but I can't just say, hey, my insurance went up 30%. I'm going to add that to it, because there's a lot of people who aren't, or they're hungry, or they're needing work. And if I just say I'm going to raise my price with every single escalation or inflation within the market, I'm going to price myself out of work.
For sure. Yeah, generally speaking, I set a date. Like if we know we have to raise prices, like it would be the next year. So like let's say we're in May, right? The next time I'd say we raise prices would be January '06, and it might only be to new clients or
Yeah.
something like that.
And you market that your prices will be raised.
I would to people that the prices were going to be raised, I would notify them well in advance if they want to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did that with a podcast we lost. I told him it was actually a similar time of year. I'm like in September. I didn't go to January because we really couldn't. I had to by September. I'm like, hey, this is what the price is going to be. And when we got to August, he's like, yeah, I understand. I'm going to go with so and so, which is fine. But that's the nature of it.
Do you think, Nick, that there's like a misconception as to the opportunity to simply pass that fee or that increase in cost on to clients?
What do you mean a opportunity, like a missed opportunity?
No, do you think there's a misconception about that? Like essentially a lot of people think, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Prices go up. The customer's paying for it. It's not my money.
I don't know. I guess what I'm kind of stuck on is, something I read recently about specifically pricing services and how, if you're Doug, like you're explaining, like being in the middle of the pack, and doing a higher quality product, where I go is, does it make sense to just double your price and then have 50% of your customers go away?
Right.
Because you're doing half the amount of work and making the same exact amount of money.
Sure.
And obviously that's easier said than done, but it's just something
which is what we did last year.
Right. And
I can't
it's
do it
like
again.
you could, but
I guess
but you could, like, and I think that's the interesting thing. But Tyler, to your question, or even just going back to Dom's point, I think a lot of business owners have this conversation with employees or other or people that are employees versus an employer, and they have this like general sense. It's like, oh, it's your business, you can make as much money as you want. Sure, I could, but the reality of the situation is most of us pour everything back into the business, and we take just enough money out of the business to support our family and our well-being. And I think it's rare that we're just like we're constantly going up and capturing more of more profit just for the sake of our own personal well-being.
Well, I also I think that the mentality is for a lot of people that as a contractor, especially as somebody in the cost plus world or having an escalation clause, that's a get out of jail free card, and you have immunity to having to eat any of those costs. Like you are completely isolated and protected when the cost of materials or the cost of insurance goes up, because contractually you are not obligated to maintain those prices. Like you're protected. And while that works on paper, and while that's amazing to kind of dig your heels in and say, well, this is what the contract says, as humans, as business owners, as people pleasers, it's not that simple. Like oftentimes when prices go up or insurances go up, overheads go up, cost of materials go up, we end up taking a hit, or we have to put a ton of equity into value engineering that project with no real return in order to get it back on budget.
I got you. I misunderstood what your point earlier. Yeah, I mean, I think to what you're saying is that there is the emotional aspect of it, right? Like you go into it.
I think that a lot of people just think that as an owner of a business, that regardless of what happens within the industry or with the market or the financial world, that you're protected and you absolve yourself of any of those liabilities because it doesn't affect your salary, right? You could always just compensate for it. And I feel that that's probably the furthest thing from the truth. And I would argue that it's probably easier for most everyone else to get a raise before the owner of that business does
For
that.
sure. I mean, my grandparents owned a business for 71 years before they retired, and they didn't pay themselves until the last 6 or 8 years.
So they just paid for themselves to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They took whatever was left at the end of the year, and they didn't pay themselves. I come from a family of, business owners, and there's a farming business. It wasn't, they didn't own a fucking Chevy dealership or something. And that's not a shot at dealership people, but I feel like that's a low hanging fruit. It's hard. It's a hard life to own a business. And like I said, I just feel like that misconception comes from working for bad employers. Because I think we take it on the business owners take it on the chin. I think that's what you're coming at, right, Tyler? It's like at the end of the day, we take the pound of flesh.
Yeah, I think that it's probably further from the truth than closer to the truth. And I think when things don't go according to plan, and when things aren't on budget, and when there is inflation, that typically the emotional side of it comes into play, and we are eating a lot at that point. And I don't think it's as easy as like, I think for like one of the cabinet companies I deal for will send out official emails that we're going up this percentage. It's a production line style of business. They're buying materials in bulk. Like they have enough data, and they're doing the same thing over and over again, where it's very easy to capture the rising costs of work of their business. And that, I do believe, when you're that transparent and your business is that linear, that yeah, you can raise your prices. I don't know if that's directly relating to what the owners are making. I think it's probably just covering their cost and not looking to be greedy with it. But I think with our businesses not being quite as linear, that it's so much harder, and we don't realize until it's already past the point, and then we're just trying to make it work. I think that there's like a misconception of profitability, and the realistically, as the cost of living goes up and everything else gets more expensive, do you feel that your clients are just like, hey, construction's more expensive now, we're going to pay more? Or are they going to say like, hey, let's find a way to save some money on this renovation because everything else is more expensive? Like, to me, it's the latter.
Yeah. The last 3 potential client meetings I've had, excluding the new clients, I should say, all 3 of the conversations, when we got to the budget question, I'm looking to spend as little as possible.
Yeah.
If AI could do it, I'd have AI do it, but it's not there yet. So I'm looking to spend as little as possible.
And why? Like, that doesn't have anything. That's because of everything else in life, right, not because of creating media. And like, I feel that it's the same for us, right? Everything else is more expensive. So they go to here and they try and navigate here, or try and haggle the prices or the execution or the contract here, because there's plenty of people who are willing to sharpen their pencil and save them some money. Like it seems as though it's a world which they can negotiate, where it's not a dealership. It's not, they're not going into ShopRite and asking them what they can spend less money on. It just seems as though when things get more expensive everywhere else, that it's harder to remain competitive, because people can't just say, hey, my insurance went up 20%. I'm going to put 20% on top of what I did last year, because people are going to be like, no, I'm not paying that.
Right.
I think it's also like the landscape around what's negotiable. It's like you go into a car dealership, you're going to negotiate pricing. You're building a house, you're going to negotiate terms, contract terms and pricing. You don't go into a grocery store thinking that you can negotiate that.
Yeah.
I think that like it's framed around that. And I think that's a big reason why, I want to productize what we're doing as a builder. It's what we're doing for 45 Wood Oak. It's like, that's not going to be a negotiation when it comes, I say it's easier said than done, but like, I don't plan nor want to negotiate the price of that project. Like you're not, I mean, I've never bought a Ferrari, but I can't imagine you're negotiating the cost of a Ferrari. It's like, no, like you're being invited to purchase a Ferrari. This is the cost. It's
you're
like,
not price shot. Like I called the Ferrari dealership down the street and they can
like,
get
no,
me
you didn't.
this one.
It's like, no, you didn't. You also can't buy a Ferrari until you own a used one. Like there's access, like you have to have granted access to it. Doug, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about actually Troy, who did the renderings that are behind you, and his marketplace. He's a rendering company, and I've actually thought about that a lot. It's like, I wonder what his thoughts are on AI. And because he's, the stuff that's behind you, the 45 Wood Oak project was rendered. That's all like visual artistry.
Yeah.
That's weeks of hand work. Like they're making that stuff.
I don't think it really affects what he does. I'll let you finish a thought.
But I would argue that there's a reason for that. And I think whatever, it would be this, I think you and him should talk, because it would be interesting to see if there's parallel behind what Motif does and what he does in terms of, there's service and then there's product. And right now it's like, the guys that are looking to do as little as possible, are looking for a service.
Right.
They're not looking for a product or a result. They're just, hey, I want video editing and I want to pay as little as possible.
Yeah.
If it's like, hey, we'll create a feature film that's going to win awards or get you clients or whatever the case is, it's like, yeah, that's completely different.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I like that idea of it. The AI thing is like Gary V said it the best way. It's like you can't stick your head in the sand and pretend it's going to go away. I think you have to pay attention to what's going on and how it's being used. But I'm not particularly worried about what we do, because I just don't think it's come close to doing what we're doing right now. And probably the same for Dark Studio, where you can't put in any prompt currently and get these renderings.
But even when it does get to that point, like someone needs to know how to prompt it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's going to create new jobs.
It's just a tool. Like it's a tool to get to, that the result.
Yeah.
And, whether you it's the same thing for us. There's going to be AI and robots that are replacing the labor. I just saw yesterday. I want to say, I think I might be misspeaking. I don't know what company it was, but they built a robot for roofing.
I saw that.
Did you see it? It's like, and it rolls across the roof and it picks up an architectural shingle, drops it down, nails it, grabs another one and moves across the roof. Yeah. And it's big and it's bulky, but it does the job. And it's like, oh, but it's slow. It's like, yeah, but there's literally no one around.
Yeah.
It's just up there. Like, it's just like you set it on the roof and it just does it.
I mean, the reason why people are doing
version 1,
the reason why people are doing all of that again is to create efficiencies or remain competitive or increase their margins. Like nobody's doing it for any other reason than that. It's all of these other factors that are driving those decisions in the first place, because you have to do something to be able to put more work in place without necessarily just growing a business or saying, hey, I'm going to do 2x the revenue. Like you either need to increase your margins, create profitability. I think that people are being squeezed and they're looking for other opportunities to make money at a less of a liability, a less of a risk, and a less of an overhead cost. And I think of it, when's the last time that you guys adjusted your own personal rate to what you're making? Like for me, it's a little bit different because I'm making money and it's a direct correlation to the jobs. But like, I know the last time I raised my rates and I wasn't like, hey, I need to make more money. It was more so just coming to the realization that I wasn't capturing time or costs associated with my business. It wasn't, it wasn't from a financial perspective of, hey, I need more, as much as I'm not running a viable business right now. So when's the last time you guys looked at your numbers and you're like, I personally need to change my rate? And was that to make more money or just keep your head above water?
It was a year ago to keep our head above water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like it's, I'm constantly looking at that. I feel that's once a month. I feel like I sit down at my desk and I have all these levers in front of me, and I'm like, all right, which one do I need to pull, and which, like, where do I need to kind of, focus my energy on? And that's and that's a big reason we've talked about that a lot. Just being overburdened with stuff and having too many irons in the fire. But to answer your question, I think it's something that anyone that's self-employed should be looking at constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. Like, it's the same thing we talk about in all the scaling conversations we had, and even in the core structure. It's like, if you don't know where you're trying to go, it's really hard to get there.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
you gotta set some sort of goal. It's like, all right, what is the goal here? Am I trying to, and work backwards from what the personal goal is? It's like, I want to make $100,000 a year. It's like, okay, well, what's that based on? Like, is $100,000 a year going to allow you to survive? Is it surviving in your current condition? Is it putting money away to buy a house? Like, and taking the time to actually understand that is something that the majority of us and people just don't do.
and I also think that, like, that number or a cost of living increase to your salary, or looking to increase your margins as a business owner, it all has to be validated, and has to be validated by the market and by your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I can't just say, I'm going to charge 30% more per hourly rate or increase my margin or my markup without validating that. And a lot of times, like, you're going to reach a ceiling, and in order to make more money, you have to focus on profitability rather than top line revenue, right? Where it's like, well, I can't, like, necessarily put more work into place because it's costing me more. So how can we create efficiencies within our business? And I think that that's the mindset that employees should have as well, where it's like, yeah, the cost of living has gone up, but you can't just expect a raise because of inflation, because of the cost of living. Like, what can you bring to the table to create efficiencies within that business that they don't have to put more work in place and increase top line revenue in order to pay you more? Like, for me, that's the same way that I look at it from a business mentality, where it's like, well, what can we do to create a higher profitability, rather than just saying, hey, we're gonna increase our sales by 25% to offset this. Like, you have to validate why you're raising those numbers, and you can't just say, I'm just going to raise it for the sake of raising it, or because, this went up or that went up. Even if that's the case and that's the way it should be, oftentimes you can't justify that within most markets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that that's tough. So I a while back, I was actually going to put this on the paint course that we made, but I started pricing out a job, just like a pretty simple paint job, where it's a repaint, where people will go in and do them for like $700-800 or even less, $500. And I'm like, I don't get how people could ever make money on that. And it's like, yeah, you can make money painting, but it's really hard to make money as a painting company for somebody who's not doing it scale. And this document somewhat explains that. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and then we can dig into this together. But I'm sure that it's probably similar for all of you guys. Look, dude, look at that. Damn, I'm good.
Pro.
You guys see that?
Yep.
Pro.
All right. So nobody else can see this. Doug might be able to pull some of this, but the goal here is just to somewhat explain this, and it's not super in depth, but I wanted it to be relatively simple to understand. I think that this somewhat should articulate why it's such a struggle to raise prices or make higher margins on projects when you're trying to remain competitive. So I'm explaining to people how to price a job, or estimating materials, estimating labor, all that stuff. We don't have to get into that. But then again, this is like where people are going to want to spend $700, $800 on repainting a room. And I'm like, I don't see how people could do that for less than $1,500. So I have material lists for a 150 square foot room are going to be around $300. And then you have consumables and other materials that I added up, and we're going to say that's going to be around $200. So you're going to have $500 in material costs, and then your labor, right? So for me, I can make money if I'm painting a space by myself. As soon as I hire an employee to do it, I realize that I have to scale that labor and do a lot of paint jobs. And the reason for that, let me break this out. That's bigger picture. All right. So say I have an employee who is a painter, right? He can paint a room, and I'm going to pay him or her $25 an hour. And I have a 60% burden that I'm putting on top of them. So that's going to cover the cost of that employee, which is a relatively low burden. But that $25 an hour is costing me $40 an hour just to put that person on the job. That's not making any money on them. And then say I want to make 25% on that employee, that $40 is going to go up to $50 an hour. So I'm profiting $10 an hour from that employee. So say that this job takes that single guy or girl 19 hours to paint that room, which is going to be 2.5 work days between prep, setup, breakdown, cleaning. You're at $950 that I'm charging for that, plus the $300 in paint material, plus the $200 in consumables. So you're at $1,450, $1,500. I'm making $190 on that labor for profit. So on a $1,500 job that I'm putting somebody on that job for 2.5 days at a 25% markup on that, I'm making $190. And when you consider that and how much work you'd actually have to put into place, I think that it's easier to understand the liability, the risk, and the difficulty that people have scaling their businesses. Because, right, say I want to put 3 people on jobs, how much more work do I have to line up? How does my overhead change? I'm not necessarily going to just make $190 on each of them. As I put more work in place, my overhead's going to go up. So that $190 and that 25% margin is actually probably going to drop down. So how many dollars in sales do I have to put in place and generate in a year to be able to run a profitable painting company where I'm not capitalizing on my own labor? And it winds up being a lot. And I think that that's probably indicative of your business, Doug, and of your business, Nick. I think certain trades pay a little bit more money, but at the end of the day, if I'm banking on making $190 on 2.5 days worth of work on an employee, what if that job goes 3 hours over budget? What if he paints it the wrong color? What if he spills something? Like, there goes your profit. There goes all of the work that you put in place. And I think when people start understanding that, it sheds a very different light on things.
And this is where then it becomes, I need to take on more work, more projects, because then your overhead to the business is diluted across more revenue coming in.
Yeah, or I got to raise it. It's got to be $2,000 a room. And at that point, who's going to pay $2,000 a room to send an employee and bear the overhead of that paint company, where there's an owner operator who will go and paint that space for $500 because they're making $400 a day, and that's good for them.
Right. And this comes back to the whole argument. It's like, well, you can't sell it as I can paint the room, because 2 people can paint the room for, 100% less, or 100% double the cost, right? 100% double the cost.
Yeah.
And, then it's a matter of like, okay, well, now going back to something we've preached from the very beginning, it's like, well, you have to sell value. So I guess I'll flip that back to you, Tyler. Like, all right, you're going to be double the price of the owner operator. What's how are you going to a client and selling the value on spending double?
To me, I mean, it comes like, it's pretty simple because I'm going to go in and I'm going to basically be fully transparent with all the time that's going into this job and the level of detail that we're executing to be able to capture as many of those hours as possible. But at the end of the day, with work like this, there's just a cap as to what people are willing to pay for most markets, where it's just like, is somebody going to pay me $3,000 to repaint their room, or are they going to go and run to Depot themselves and grab some bare paint and realize it's $40 a gallon? I could paint this whole space for $150 over the weekend. And not that that's who you're competing against, but if you price yourself so far out, you're not going to get the work. So that's where I think it comes into like, how can we create efficiencies within our system? Yeah, the price of paint's gone up. Yeah, the price of labor's gone up, but there's still a cap to what you can charge for this stuff. And you can't just say, you know what, I'm going to add it on top and I'm going to charge more, because given the competitive nature of the world, you still, even if you try as hard as you can to differentiate yourself and create that value proposition, you're still competing with everyone else in that space. And I think that that's where the challenge is. And I think that, like you said, most people's gut reaction is to say, we're going to sell 3 times as many jobs, thinking that, hey, I made $200 on that, so I can sell 5 of them in a week and I'm going to be making 1,000. When in actuality, your overhead goes way up, your profit margins go way down, and now you're putting 5x the work in place to only 3x what you're actually walking away with. And that's where I think people end up getting in trouble, and don't understand the economies of scale of your business.
Yeah. The big thing I think businesses can sort of, not even marketing, just in conversations with clients, talk to your skill set. We're insured, we're going to make sure the job's right. That sort of thing. Like if you hire an owner operator and he paints half the room and day 2, he doesn't show up and you have no recourse to get him back here, and you paid him up front. And you know what I mean? Like there's as many stories that go that way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I have my name on the truck. I have the Google reviews. You can go blast me if I don't finish it. I'm not going anywhere. This is my reputation. This is what I do. And look, that's easier said than done. But that is something a lot of people that are undercutting and painting that room for $300, $500 aren't going to say, because they can't offer it. The only thing, to your point, Tyler, you talk about this a lot, the only value they're bringing is a cheap price.
I think at the end of the day, you just have to realize that, like, we're going to get to a point in our industries and with the work that we're doing that we're going to be capped out. And I think that focusing on generating efficiencies within your business is going to be the answer to a lot of the struggles, and creating those systems and being able to grow your business. Like, to me, and I just recorded a podcast on this a midweek where it's like the definition of scaling is to be able to put more work in place more efficiently, like to grow your output. But I look at it from the perspective of, like, maybe I'm not going to grow my output, but I can create efficiencies within my business that let me to do the same amount of work quicker. And to me, like, it's not the traditional definition of scaling, but like at that point, if you say, hey, these are our sales, this is our revenue in a year, let's aim to put work in place that takes less time for that same amount of revenue, like, you're increasing your margins. And I think if you build your business around that, then it gives you opportunity to scale, because now when you actually increase your top line sales revenue, you have efficiencies in place that aren't just costing you more money to put that work in place. And I think that's where, like, opportunities like AI or systematizing, is that a word? Your labor, or prefab. Yeah, they can afford you an opportunity, not necessarily to be less money, but to be more efficient with your work and create better margins or a better product on your work, while still remaining competitive, because at the end of the day, even the wealthiest people have a budget and they're going to say no. And I always say it, I'm like, I have a bunch of consulting calls where people are concerned that they're charging too much, or they have people who are objecting to their pricing. And I'm like, are you driving up to the job in a Ferrari? Do you feel that you're ripping people off with your numbers? Like, do you feel that you're going on vacation every other week because you have so much money coming in? And everyone's like, no. And I'm like, well, then you're getting objection because you're probably more than the market rate. So you have to find a way, if you have to stand by that market rate, to create these efficiencies within your business to make the money that you need to. Because it's not that you're expensive, it's just that people are used to paying a very small amount of money for this stuff.
I also think it comes down to the experience, right? Like we all will pay a premium for a better, well, I shouldn't say we all, a lot of people will pay a premium for a better experience. And I think I alluded to it in one of my emails to our newsletter the other day, but we had a job and the architect straight up told me that they just didn't value our white glove approach, nor would the client, and they were going to go with the guy that was literally millions of dollars cheaper. And I'm summarizing here, but in more words than not, he basically explained to me that even though this guy is going to be a nightmare to work with, we feel comfortable that we'll end up with the result that we want, and it's not worth paying you more money for a better experience.
Yeah.
Which I think shame on the architect for bringing the client down that road, because I'm sure the client doesn't agree with that sentiment. But at the same time, it's okay. Well, that's not the team we want to work with anyway.
Mm.
I could run that job like a cowboy and be a complete asshole and get the job done, but have it be a mess. But that's just not our approach.
Yeah.
NS Cowboys.
NS Cowboys.
I mean,
yeah.
I think the point of this whole discussion and topic was it just got me thinking how it's not quite as easy to say, hey, let's charge more money, right? Like in business, in life, you hear so many people, and it's been 10 years of hearing just raise your prices, raise your prices. And it's not as simple as that. And I've asked people before, and I'll ask you guys, like, if you could do half the amount of work in a year but make the same amount of money, would you do it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, why wouldn't you? So for me, it's like, if you want to be more competitive, if you want to make more money, find ways to put the same amount of work in place with half of the effort. And I think that gives you the ability to scale or grow your business. Or screw it. If you don't want to do half the amount of work, make the same amount of money, and then do what you want with your other time. I think that where you have to be careful, and I think this is where it allows you to raise your prices, is once you start generating those efficiencies, however you're budgeting for those projects, however you're budgeting your time, at that point needs to go way up. Because if now basically you're estimating, or your T&M or your cost plus, and you're putting 2x the amount of work in place for 1x the cost, you're also going to go out of business, right? So it's like, at that point, you give yourself the opportunity to raise your prices because you're generating efficiencies within your workflow that justify that. It's not just creating a more expensive job. And I think that if people understand that, if employees understand that, or that's what we have to do as business owners in order to make more money, I think they'd have a better understanding of what our day-to-day looks like and how much stress and pressure we put on ourselves to make sure that there's work on the table, not necessarily for our own financial well-being. Like, that's not the stuff that keeps me out at night as much as, hey, I have people who are depending on me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the real stress comes in, and that they're putting a lot on the line in order to generate a lifestyle for you as well as themselves.
Something I battle every day is the fact that there's other builders that have done this 30, 40 years longer than me, and I lose work to them. And I've gotten frustrated where it's like, why does that matter? Like, it shouldn't matter. Like, we can still deliver the system. We can still deliver the project. We can do a better job than a lot of these guys. And then yesterday, I was at a client's house that we had just finished, and he said, he was familiar with another home that we had done, and he goes, "Hey, I think you did a better job on ours." And I was like, "Well, I would hope so. That one was 9 years ago."
Yeah.
And it, kind of has me thinking, especially what we're talking about right now. It's all of the knowledge that, that we've earned, and, and everything that the systems that we've built, the problems that we've faced that we can now prevent. And there is something to say about experience and time doing it that does warrant that cost to continue to raise. Different than the sole proprietor versus the guy with the team, but not so much in the sense that when you're just starting out, yeah, you might have to start out at a cheaper cost, and I think like I said, it's something I'm facing right now. And I'll tell you another conversation I had earlier this week. Actually, no, today's Tuesday. It was later last week. But I was talking to another builder and was explaining how I was asking for advice. I was like, "Hey, you've built an amazing reputation. You do some of the craziest projects. Like, I'm trying to get your advice on how we kind of break into this market." And he goes, "Walk me through some of the projects you've lost recently." So I walked him through one specific one, and I was big $9 million project. And, I was like, it was crazy because I sat in that room and they said, "Nick, you understood the project better than anyone else. Your proposal was more thorough. It was really easy to understand. Like, it was complete, like everything was in front of me. You had the detail when I needed it, but you simplified it where it made sense. The most aesthetic looking proposal, it was just well done. You presented really well. You actually interviewed really well. The client really liked you. They liked your process. They liked how you would communicate throughout the project." I was like, "What about pricing?" They were like, your pricing was exactly where they expected it to be. But, and they were like, "But, they end up moving forward with this guy because he's been in business longer." And I walked away, and for a year now, or a year plus, I've been very frustrated at that. It's like, that's not something I can control. And I'm telling this other builder, and he's like, your incentive for them to work with you just wasn't aligned with where they thought it would be. Your incentive going into it was, my process is dialed, my communication's dialed. They value that. They totally value that. But they value the experience more than all of that. So, whether it's the right, advice or not, one of the things that he had said, he goes, "In my career, when I was in that position, I had to convince someone to give me the shot. Listen, I understand that, I'm telling you all these things and you like all these things, but you're valuing experience over, over everything. So despite me being aligned exactly from a cost perspective, you're not giving me the shot." And he said, "I end up doing that a project for a reduced fee." And it was the second person that told me that. And the first guy told me that he said, "I'll do it at a reduced fee. And if I screw up one time, I want you to fire me. And you can go hire this builder over here who that can execute and step in and take it over. And I'll just sit back and be an owner rep for you," or something like that. And I was like, there is something to be said about that, where it's, we're sitting here, we preach raising prices and getting to a profitable business. But we can't. I think a lot of people struggle with that because they're in a similar position where they're trying to scale, they're trying to break into these markets, and you have to, you have to be competitive when it makes sense to be competitive. And when you're going out, I'm not saying for a quote unquote typical job. I'm saying this specifically for breaking into a new market or trying to up the ante of what your business is doing, there's a time and place for it. And it's something that I've been, really considering for the last week is, if I'm really going to break into a higher market and compete with the bigger guys, I need to incentivize the client to give me a shot.
I think you also have to, like we were talking about, experience is going to breed efficiency and ingenuity. And I think that a lot of times, yeah, like experience does give you an opportunity to charge more money. But I think also sometimes it gives you an opportunity to perform more at a given price point. Because I look at, like you said, when I first started in business, and it's probably the same for you, Doug. But even if I break it down to like a simple task of installing crown molding in a room, and like my pricing hasn't really changed on that, I just do it in way less time now. So like the overall number is the same, but I'm far more efficient with my setup and my process and my product, that I'm able to execute the same amount of work in a smaller amount of time. And it allows me to put more work into place at the same price point. I'm not just saying, hey, like there's an opportunity to sell that job as, hey, I have the experience, it's going to be better. But when it just comes down to being and remaining competitive, yeah, I can hit the same numbers as everyone else, but I'm actually going to make my money through being lean and through being efficient. And I think, that's something that, Doug, you're probably going to have to turn to a lot with your business, and utilizing some AI strategy and techniques to take your owner fee out of some of the work that you're doing and remain competitive, but increasing your margins and your profitability while doing that.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to grow with the ever-growing NS Builders, modern Craftsman empires, so, and grow client base. So it is a challenge sometimes, but
yeah, I mean, there's so many opportunities for growth and scaling, and I think that we're all looking at it, and most people in our businesses look at it. Most people I speak to, that is just like, hey, we have to put more work in place. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to increase margins first, and then increase margins, refine systems. And then at that point, if you want to put more work in place, like, you're golden to do that. And you can elect how to do that or how quickly to do that. But for me, the first step is just creating those systems, creating those efficiencies, making your current business model as profitable as possible in the market where you are, gaining that experience, and then putting all of that into use. If at that point you want to put more work in place, you're already set up for success.
yeah. And the easiest, not the easiest, but the most podcasts are very approachable to systemize, just because of the nature of what they are. Whereas what I do for Nick and like site visit, that isn't just something that can be, and it can have a process to an extent, but there just needs to be, I don't know, there needs to be that human touch to it, because every time it's so different. Each episode of site visit is, obviously not apples to apples here, but it's like building a house, right? It's the same, but it isn't. This house is different than the last house. This one's going to take a little bit more of this than that, right? There are no two episodes alike, where podcasting is pretty, no matter what it is or what you're talking about, it's pretty formulaic on how to edit it and export it and yada, yada, yada. Where when you're doing something like site visit for Nick or a product video or whatever, there's a skill, there's an artistry to it, right? So
certain aspects of that
can
there's
be, yeah.
Yeah, but like there's certain that can't be, right?
Yes.
There's certain aspects that you can't make a substitution.
Right.
and you can't swap one thing for another, and you can't pull yourself out of that equation.
Right.
I think it's finding the balance where you
Yeah.
can to create the efficiencies to be able to get some growth there, right? Where it's like, yeah, I'm learning, we're making mistakes, but for this portion here, like I don't need to have my hands on this. There's people who can handle this, and just creating a system where there's less downtime. There's less just input from your perspective, and balancing that with like too much, too little, and where's the equilibrium point where this is the max that we can do as far as work and just production, while still meeting the standards that our clients want
Yeah.
delivered. And then at that point, it's like, all right, here we are. We're maxed out now without taking on more. How do we get to a point where we're putting less time into this and like refining, and you get to a point where it's like, all right, now we're doing this and it's taking us 10% less time, which we either use on building our business, or we use on, hey, now, every 2 weeks, that's an additional day that we have that we can devote to something else throughout the year. And it's just those little things. I think a lot of times with growth, also things change so quickly, and you're constantly adapting. And it's like, you're wearing the tool belt, so you have your hand in everything. And it's almost like, well, I can't imagine taking on anything else or doing anything less at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like the cycle that you can get stuck in, that actually stunts your growth, because it can't live without you, and it can't grow with you. And finding that equilibrium point where it's like, okay, yeah, we can do what we need to do and make our clients happy, and still meet the numbers that we need to, that I'm not having to work 80 hours a week just to break even.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the classic story of small businesses, I feel, especially in the space that we are, where we all got into this from the hands-on artistic perspective. And then it's like, well, how the hell do we make a business out of this while still wanting to maintain and have and meet a standard and feel content with what we're doing?
Yeah. No, I know. Well, I guess you take all statistics with a grain of salt, but I heard a statistic a couple of weeks ago about media companies. Like 19 out of 20 of them fail within 5 years or something. It's like, I mean, that makes sense. Cause you'd think it'd be like this super profitable, and that's not to say there aren't super profitable media companies. But I think you get to a point where it becomes that maybe 10 years in. But
it's got to be like, I don't know. I look at it from the perspective of barrier to entry as well now, where it's like
very
there's just
easy.
there's like an opportunity for so many more people to get into it. And you also have to consider quality,
Sure.
because where it's like, yeah, we can oversell this and we can overproduce this and we can differentiate ourselves that way, where it's like nobody's going to create the caliber of content that we are. But at the end of the day, we're all watching this on a 3-inch by 5-inch screen. So really, what does it matter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I it's interesting you say that. There's someone who reached out to me who he bought a drone for a vacation. He's been trying to sell it to me too. He's like, oh, maybe I'll just start doing weddings on the weekends. He's like, how much can I charge? How much can I charge for that? Yeah, like just show up and do some drone shots at a wedding.
That wouldn't be
like,
distracting.
I don't know if there's a lot of scenarios where they're just going to hire you just to do drone shots, but I'll play along. I'm like, you're going to have to spend about $1,800, between $1,000 and $1,800 on drone insurance. And I kind of went down all these things. And he's like, yeah, I definitely don't want to do that. And I'm like, you could probably charge, $200 to $500, depending on how many images, how long you're there. He's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I want to do that. I think in his mind, he's like, oh, I could make a couple grand a weekend, or Maybe you could. I'm not saying you can't, but I do think everybody thinks they could kind of step up to do it. And a lot of people can. You know, your phone is a very powerful tool. I tell a lot of people to start with their phone, and when they're not happy with what they're doing with their phone, that's when you go to hire a professional.
I told someone that last week, and they were like, I feel like I should just hire a media crew to start creating content. And I was like, you're not even doing it on your phone.
Yeah,
Like,
start there.
you can't you can't just go right to the
That's
media.
not the first step.
No, because like they're gonna show up, and you're not gonna know what to do.
You could be overwhelmed.
Yeah, and it's like, just, especially the new phones nowadays, like the camera's so good.
I mean, I also like shooting on higher produced. Like for me, Doug, what you do, it's like the sell for me is how lean you are, how mobile you are, and how efficient you are with what you're doing. And that's like other stuff that I shot where it takes 2 days to shoot, we're able to do with you in a few hours. And like, if you were to watch it on a TV screen, all the gaffing, all the lighting, the directing, yeah, it makes a difference. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to like budget and what you're spending and the time investment and what you're having to pull away from work, like, is that the sell? Is that the move? Is that the path to sustainability and growth? I don't know. Like, I don't know if everything needs that level of production when you're able to do what you're able to do, like with such agility.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you want to, double the amount of shoot time and triple the cost, talk about lighting setups and gaff work, like to your point, that's a quick way to make a 2-hour shoot a 3-day shoot.
Yeah. And nobody else can do anything during that time on the job site.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, actors get paid to sit in trailers, because the DP, like, they're lighting, they're setting
it's
up
crazy.
lighting. Yeah.
Like, you don't realize it until you see it, but it's like, yo, that whole shot just took 4 hours to set up. And then we got to break down, and it was for like 4.5 minutes worth of content.
And I sorry to butt in, but it's like, I value that. Like, and it, for my own sense only, like, I love the cinematic stuff. And like, I send Doug's stuff constantly. He's like, Nick, like, we'll do that, but like, you have to understand there's
not a time and a place for it.
That is not what we're doing.
There's definitely a time and a place.
And I'm like, but for me, like, I don't want, I just want it. I don't want to think about it. I was like, and Whistling Diesel is actually a great example because, his content is, have you ever seen it, Tyler?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, his content's ridiculous. But a couple months ago, he posted a video, and the first like minute 30 seconds was this insanely cinematic shot of him like on a bus. I don't actually remember what the intro was about, nor why he did this cinematic shot. And then it just turned into him like rolling a Dodge Ram down a hill upside down.
Yeah.
But I was like, I was like so intrigued by the fact that this was so cinematic that it got like, that was the hook. Like, that for me, that was the hook. And it's, and Doug and I constantly talk about content, and it's, I mean, the reality is like, some of the most viral content that we've ever posted is just shot on my iPhone.
Dude.
But someone's like, so why not just do that? I'm like, I do want to do that. And I want stuff to go viral, and I will continue to do that. But I want to also filter in the sexy stuff.
Yeah.
It's a great example is this Ashton Hall guy, where it's like, if you don't know who he is, I guarantee you know who he is, because he's the guy that put his face in the bubbly ice water, and now everyone's making fun of him. But the dude amassed, I think it was 14 million followers in like 6 months or something like that. And that's great. He's created this insane virality behind his personal brand, but it's like, and he's selling coaching courses, and apparently it's a big scam, and he's stealing people's money. But regardless of
put a pin in that.
Yeah, put a pin in that. But regardless, like the reality is like, he should be creating this viral content, but then supplement it with an actual product.
Yeah.
And and I mean, hopefully that's not true, but like apparently it is. But permanent pin in that.
Hate to hear it.
I think again, it's about that balance and finding where you fit in the space and understanding your limitations, and where there is room for growth and where there's a time to really focus on being lean and creating efficiencies within your business and systems. And I think that the more that you can do that, it's the less work you have to put in place to generate the same amount of work or volume at the end of the day. And I think that it's a really great way to grow your business or set yourself up for like actual substantial growth, rather than just, like my paint example where everyone's just going to think, well, I'm only making $190 in 2.5 days. Like, I got to sell 5 of those jobs, where it's like, maybe that's not the answer.
Yeah. What we've been talking about a lot is not overproducing content. So when Nick was talking about, some of the biggest reaching videos have been just shot with his phone. So now we plug a mic into his phone and, we record sometimes 2, sometimes 6 or whatever, quick short videos with his phone that live on his phone, and he can post them whenever he wants because they're sort of ready-made videos. So we're not overproducing that. That's not taking 4 hours of my time or Paul's time editing. They were done kind of in the can, in the can,
Mm-hmm.
in camera. So knowing what level of production value to put on the content is as important as the content itself. We're kind of finding, and that just kind of reinforces what you're saying. It's just like that is something that we spent a lot of time doing, is editing short form clips that could have just been shot with Nick's phone, and they get double the reach.
But to that point, like, I want to do that and then supplement.
No, I'm not saying. Yeah, we still do all the other stuff.
I know.
Let me rephrase.
I'm just protecting. I'm protecting.
One piece of the thing is that I'm still spending 20 plus hours a week editing Site Visit, and Paul's putting together reels that are the sexy reels. So we're still doing the other stuff. That's part of it.
And I think that's like the conversation where, okay, we need to make more money, or the costs of operating a business have gone up. And instead of just saying we're going to raise our prices 50%, it's like, hey, well, you know what? We can upsell you on this. And while we're here filming this, we'll also film 2 or 3 things on your iPhone that are a small amount more. And it's going to cover the increased cost of business and inflation and everything else. And we're going to bring value to this relationship and this transaction through that, rather than just saying, hey, you know what we did for you last year is now 30% more. You're creating a product or an experience or a system or an efficiency within your business that's actually bringing value to the table while capturing a higher rate.
Sure.
And to me, that's the move, where it's like, this doesn't really cost us that much more, but it's bringing that much value, and we can cover our time, or any increases in cost. And I think that a lot of people behind the scenes don't see that or don't understand that, and just think that as business owners, we have this opportunity to say, well, you know what? It costs this much more to be in business this year. So we're just, next job, the calendar year rolls over, we're just adding that to our pricing, where it doesn't, that's not the way it is. Not in our business, not the size that we are.
Yeah.
If it is, that's amazing. More power to you. But I think that most people in our line of work probably struggle with that, right? We can't charge more, and we're not getting work as is. So where do we go from here?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah.
That was my musings for the day. I didn't know what we were going to talk about, and then I got that text, and I was like, damn, that is not accurate at all.
Listen here. What's his name? Dom? Big Dom?
Yeah, Big
You
Dom.
guys
Big
love people named Dom down there in Philly, don't you? Big
Dude.
Dom.
Italian.
Who else is Dom?
You don't follow football. Sorry.
Oh,
Big Dom. Down there in the Eagles.
I was thinking, what's the guy from Fast and Furious? Dom.
Oh, Toretto.
That's all.
Toretto.
That's all is. He has like a bunch of Brazilian guys who frame for them, and that's
Toretto.
what they all call him.
It's amazing.
SWAT.
What, Doug? You started a podcast.
I did. Creative Context.
Creative Context. What I'm just be honest. I haven't listened to an episode. So what is it? What's it
You
about?
commented on one, so hopefully you listened to
did?
that one. Yeah, I did.
AI,
on
baby.
YouTube.
AI, baby.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Hold on, real quick on that comment. Meg accused me of using like auto response one time. Like she posted something on Instagram and like I just happened to have my phone in my hand and I saw it and I commented and I put my phone in my pocket and I like had got into the room that she was standing in and she goes, "Do you have something auto responding to my post?" I'm like, "What? No." She goes, "There, you just did it in your phone. You don't even have your phone out." I'm like, timing just was obviously perfect.
Great timing.
Yeah, great timing.
I have a co-host, Eric Wing. He runs a web development and SEO business in Cambridge, Darby Digital. We met at a networking group, and we had some good conversations. And I'm like, we should record these conversations because I think people are interested. Kind of the take on it is talking about the relationship between clients and creative professionals. And kind of bridging misconceptions. Is that toothbrush? Oh, it's a straw. I'm like, Tyler's brushing his teeth.
You're a little mid podcast toothbrushing.
Just like to stay fresh. Quick brush. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so kind of like what you're saying, Tyler, when your buddy Big Dom was like, "Hey, it's kind of answering that kind of question. It's like there's a lot of misconceptions around working with creative professionals and maybe a lot of people that don't reach out to them because of, maybe they heard a bad story from this person or over here. So we try to answer a lot of questions that kind of revolve around working with creative professionals. And of course, we talk about our own businesses and our own processes and all that sort of thing. And there's a little bit, if you're not a creative professional, there's a lot of information to be gained about working with them.
Which is important.
If you are a creative professional, there's a lot of information to learn about working with. It's because Eric's been in business for 20 years. Obviously, I'm on my second business, but I've been a professional for almost 20 years. No, not almost 20 years. 15 years. Almost 15 years.
That's fucking crazy.
Which is wild to think about. But
how many episodes are you on so far?
We're recording and posting our 20th episode tomorrow.
Damn. What's the cadence for that? Once a week?
Yeah. We only missed 1 week, and that's because I woke up one morning and my dog had scratched her retina.
Oh.
Just the never-ending story of Tess and her ailments.
Are you guys recording in person?
No. Maybe someday we will, but believe it or not, getting from South Boston to Cambridge, despite maybe appearing close on a map,
it's not.
Depending on the time of day, could take an hour.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, despite being very close, we are kind of in different ecosystems. So maybe I wouldn't rule it out.
So what was the main motivator for you two? I know that you said the typical kind of stumbled upon this conversation, but do you have goals for the podcast as far as like reach or what you want to gain from it or anything like that?
Like I said, Eric and I met at a networking group, and it's a very elder statesman networking group. Like a lot of people in the group had been in it for 10 plus years. Someone had been in it for 17 years. Like,
wow.
It was this really tight group, and I'd been in it for about a year. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with, like, they make they track how much money is shared across the group, and it's usually well over a couple million or something. So it works, and I have nothing. It just wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, the conversations we're having at these meetings, let's record it and share it and kind of exponentially reach out to people.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we're not doing that right now. Something I preach with podcasts is it takes time. You know, how many years have you guys been doing this? Since 2017, I believe.
Yep.
So almost a decade. It takes time to sort of get rolling. And yeah, I think that's just the point of the podcast, is to kind of look. I want to learn just as much as I want to bring value to the people listening. We've only had one guest, but I think we're going to work towards having like a guest a month or here and there. Not every week would be a guest. Just from a logistics standpoint, I don't think we want to do that. But
Are there many other podcasts in that space right now?
I think most of the podcasts in that space focus on creative process.
Yeah, like tactical, like
yeah, and theoretical.
here's how you do this.
Yeah, not so much how I do this, but like, you know, maybe like how, like step by step, but like stories around creative process and like mentality. And
I think it was Neil Patel's podcast I got on for a bit. He would do these like 5 to 7 minute podcasts.
Yeah.
And it would be like, here's 3 things that you should be doing for Google Ads. And it was, I was hooked on him for a while. I haven't listened to one in a while, but it was like exactly that. It was just like, you know, either theory or like quick, these are the, you know, the 3 things that you need to do.
Yeah, and we're not sort of locked into any particular. Like, I think naturally the podcast will sort of evolve over time, but right now that's sort of where we're at with it.
You have to evolve, and I think that the more that you can, the more that you can adapt, the more that you can keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. It's just like anything else. I think you'll have an ability to stay ahead of the curve, and just, you know, creating enough in it for yourself as well, and enough value in it for you too, that you can remain consistent with it. I think a lot of people who start them, it's exciting, it's new, you're on this pink cloud, and then when you get to the point where it's like, oh man, there's another thing I have to do this week that I have to do every week, and that like newness wears off, that it's one of the first things to go. And I think that if you are able to create enough value and serve yourselves through it, which I think is something that Nick and I didn't do for a long time, and I think something that we're actually looking to focus on a little bit more now. But when you provide for yourself through the content and through the podcast, I think that it makes it a lot easier to remain consistent in something that you want to wake up for.
Yeah, and I talk about this a lot. Well, not a lot, but I've talked about this on our podcast. Like, I look at podcasts as like websites in the 90s. Like, think about a company that came out with a website in the 90s. They were probably mocked a little bit, like, ooh, you have a website.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that? And I feel like there's a lot of that around podcasting, probably because there's so many now. Like, oh, you're a podcaster. But like, I think it is going to be, that is how people are going to more and more digest information about you. It's like, how much media is there around you? And a podcast is a great way to just talk about, if you're listening to this and you've thought about making a podcast, it's a great way to share your stories, your process, your things. Even if it's just you talking at a camera, you don't have a co-host or some ulterior thing like that. Obviously this is outside of Motif, but I've contemplated, I just currently don't have the bandwidth of making like a Motif podcast where like it's just like a 10-minute thing that's also a blog post. But that's probably in the cards at some point. I think everybody should be sort of thinking about that for their website, as having a podcast that sort of mirrors the information that you're putting out there in social and on your website in long form, right? Because then people can listen to it when they're in the car, when they're on a jog, when they're waiting at the fucking DMV. Like, it opens up the ability, because someone can't read their phone like this when they're jogging. Probably
Right.
they're listening to music when they're jogging. Let's be real, but you get where I'm going with this. It opens up the ability for people to digest information about you.
Yeah. I think that's where I've kind of taken, even with midweek, where it's and I think with Nick's email newsletter, that's just some me time each and every week that I probably would be doing regardless of people listening or not.
Hmm.
It wasn't even until recently where we discussed numbers and what they look like. I just think it serves me well selfishly. I know that it helps other people and there's other people listening, but it's not necessarily about the numbers as much as kind of debriefing and compartmentalizing my life and my week and what's going on in my head, and just taking some time to kind of reflect on that.
Yeah, and I think that's what people should keep in mind. Is like there's a lot of builders that don't know where to sort of start with media, right? I took some iPhone pictures. I don't really know. I want to post them. Blah blah blah. We have a good website or whatever. It's like, well, start a podcast and talk about that project you never posted pictures of, and overlay some pictures. Don't hire somebody to do it. Use YouTube. Do it yourself. Talk about everything about that project you want to talk about. Don't fuck the architect or the design. Like, talk about everything you want to talk about. And obviously do it in a professional manner. And that's no disrespect to architects, but like, talk about it from your perspective, what you want to talk about it. Put it on your website. It doesn't matter if it's exactly how you want it to look currently, but that gives you a starting point, and it's easy to do. You probably have a laptop with a webcam. You probably have headphones that have microphone. We're already there. You probably have some pictures of that job you want to talk about. So that's a great place to start if you're listening, and like you keep coming back to it every few months. Like, Jesus, I still haven't posted those fucking photos. Like,
It's
here
true.
you go. This is your moment. If you've gotten an hour and 26 minutes and 45, 46, 47 seconds in, do it.
Yeah, why not?
You've got all the tools.
I mean, I think that it's
in your pocket, probably.
It's interesting that from the perspective of why you did it. And again, I think that having that mindset where this is something that we're doing, it may not have necessarily aligned with your needs at that point, but rather than just give up doing it, like, let's take that to another platform. And why not record that? Why not put that out if it helps a few other people? It's holding you two accountable to continue learning and growing and bouncing ideas off of one another. So everyone else start one for yourself and then have Motif get on the editing.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we could do that, but I think you should start for yourself, see how much work it is, become really annoyed with it and still want to do it. Then you call me, and then you'll feel a lot better about it.
That's a
You'll
great
feel a lot
piece of
better.
advice. Doug, last point on that, like, the reality is people want the story behind things. And, even for us, like, we talk about the content that we put out and Tyler, I think you said to me last week about like my weekly emails. It is frankly been kind of like a therapy session for me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm kind of exhausting a lot of what's on my mind. And, I realize there's a kind of woe is me aura around it, which I want to make sure I'm balancing with, like, here are the things that I've won at, and here's where I've made it. And we've always said, like, we want to kind of talk about the hard shit that is very difficult, because social media is always about all the wins. Like, well, what about the struggle? But, I've thought about the fact that I just, I keep joking with everyone that when I finish White Oak, I'm going to write a book about it, because it was one of the more challenging things I've ever done in my entire life. And I said it again yesterday jokingly, and someone was like, "You should." I was like, "No, I mean, I sure I quote unquote should, but it's just like, you know, is that really what I want to do when it's all said and done? Even though like I know it will be an interest, or maybe I just do a one like podcast series. Is like, all right, here's where we started, and you know, and interestingly, I've been saving little like moments over the last 2 years of like, you know, things that have, you know, basically anytime I feel like, man, I should just stop doing this because this is brutal, I've made like either a mental note, or I've taken a screenshot, or I have a couple of voice notes saved, just so I can look back and be like, oh yeah, that day, like I was done, like I was tapped out, and you know, and then fast forward, it's like this is what we ended up with. But
it's
yeah,
true.
I mean, to your point, I think people like those stories,
and I think that without like inventorying that day to day,
you only have the good.
Correct. And you only have like what's top of mind or what's most pressing at that point. And I think that that's like, from a lifestyle perspective, from a business perspective, a self-development, like you lose sight of how far you've come and the steps that you've taken and the changes that you've made almost immediately when you don't document that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important because not that you want to live in the past, but I think to understand where you're coming from and where you've gone and the changes that you've made.
It's what I've always appreciated about journaling. Yeah. And journaling isn't something I do, but it's, you know,
but if you do, you can buy a modern Craftsman notebook.
There you go. There's that CTA. No, but I like I've had short stints where I would sit down and just write out all my thoughts and be like, all right, I should do this every day. And you know, I think that there's a lot to be said about that, because it gives you opportunity to reflect, and for the good and the bad, but you know, to understand how you've worked through some of this stuff. All right.
True.
Well, on that note,
we did another podcast and we didn't talk about my house.
That is what you said.
We'll save it to when I'm done. How about that?
There we go. Well, Doug is renovating his house. If you want to see the most updated version, it is on our YouTube, at NS Builders on YouTube.
Quincy College.
Doug basically says, I said, how's renovating going? And he says, it sucks. And then we do a video. So, yeah. Doug, thanks for being on, dude.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks for all you do for the brand, man. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Till next time. We'll see you next week.
Adios.
See ya.
Trust my mama, you're no match for my bad karma.